makes the constitution so important. There are few things that makes the constitution, the internal complaints committee is very important, is because of the nature of work that is assigned to the internal complaints committee, the nature of work that is assigned to an IC. So at the end of the day, IC, and this is something that we have to explain to the organizations that we work with, and also explain while we are also doing the work, is that IC is both an inquiry body and both a final authority of decision. So it's not that the decision making happens in a vacuum, but the decision making also happens because the inquiry also needs to be conducted by the IC itself. A lot of times, and especially right in the very beginning when the law started, when the law had come out in 2013, and I'm talking about a time in 2015, 2016 when the law was still maturing, and people still didn't have very clear understanding of what is an IC. There was a lot of confusion in organizations' mind where they would think that IC members wouldn't do inquiry. Because inquiry ke liye we needed to set up some other body. But once you read the law and once more case laws started coming into place and we saw judicial precedents on this topic, it was very, very clear that IC is an inquiry body in itself. So there is no other body that will conduct the inquiry. IC members need to conduct the inquiry, need to do all the investigation process that needs to be conducted, and they also need to finally pass the recommendation on what they finally derive in a particular case. Do they come to a conclusion that the case is not proved, or do they come to a conclusion that the case is actually proved? Second thing that is very important, and why IC is the constitution of an IC in an organization is so important, is because at the end of the day, IC is a non-biased body, or is supposed to be a non-biased body. Of course, practically speaking, a lot of questions come in, because if you look at the constitution of IC, which we'll be looking into, minimum you require 4 members, and out of which 3 members are internal members. So obviously the question on how non-biased or unbiased an ICC is when they are investigating their own colleagues at the end of the day comes up a lot of times. And but it's about training also. Like, this is where training of an ICC comes into play, and it's very important to distill all these pointers in ICCs when you are training them, that it's very important to let them know that you are an unbiased body. At the end of the day, irrespective of the relationship you share with your colleagues, when a complaint comes, when we are looking at complaints, then there is a certain form of non-biasness that we need to exhibit, and there are a lot of tips and tricks that we can do to exhibit that. But it's not difficult, or it's not impossible to express that. Because, and the reason I am focusing so much on the part that ICC needs to be unbiased is because invariably, and many ICCs that I have been a part of as well, ICCs are very biased towards a certain member who has come, either the complainant or the respondent. It's a very natural human reaction to do that. But that's what one of the first points of training that we have to make sure that the ICC understands, is that when you are conducting an inquiry, and because ICCs as per law have to adhere to the principles of fairness and natural justice, and the only principles that are mentioned in the law, then you need to break those 2 principles down. What is fairness? At the end of the day, fairness is being fair to both parties, or say being fair to all parties who are attending, right? So you cannot be, or you cannot show biasness towards one person and ask leading questions and following questions which show your bias and which reflect your bias more and more. So that is one thing with respect to fairness. And again, principle of natural justice. It's been done in so many case laws, and I'm so happy that over the past 8 years, there have been so many high courts that have actually given judgments on the point of principles of natural justice from the perspective of POSH Act 2013 and the functioning of IC. And they have said there that principle of natural justice at the very minimum means that you need to give equal opportunity to all parties involved to present their case. So from the perspective of an IC member or an external member, working in an ICC, it's very important for all of us to understand that even if we have a case, we have formed some of our conclusion while reading the complaint, which is again a very normal reaction when you hear a event. It's very natural to form an opinion about it, but still you need to take a step back and make sure that as per procedure, you make sure that you are listening to all the parties, giving equal opportunity to both the parties to present their case, present their evidence, present all the witnesses, and interview all the witnesses that they have, given to us. So these are very important building blocks that make the constitution of an IC that and more important. Okay. And again, when I'm covering this, I'm also going to keep coming back to what is important in the ICC's trainings and what actually eventually gets covered in a handbook as well. Because when you're training an IC, be it a 1 hour of orientation session, be it a 4-hour capacity building session, be it 2 days of entire session, irrespective of however much time you are spending with an ICC, it's very important to focus on maintaining transparency, maintaining principles of natural justice, ensuring fairness, and making sure that nobody comes out as biased. Because, and I'm coming also, the point of view that I'm coming from is because a lot of times, especially in the last few years, we've also seen many appeals against ICC reports, where the appeals were made in courts on the basis that ICC was biased. And the bias was very obvious in certain cases. Okay, and how was the bias obvious? It was in terms of the members who were participating in the ICC, and I'll come to that as well. That how just the appointment of members and who does the inquiry in every inquiry vis-a-vis the complainant and the respondent is something that we also need to see. So, for example, just to explain what I just said. Imagine there is a complaint where Nidhi and I are involved, and 4 of you who are participating here are ICC members. And it turns out that while we are doing the investigation, we figure out that one of you is very close friends with me, and I am the complainant here, right? Or I am the respondent, irrespective of the nomenclature. But the question is that one of the ICC members is either very close friends with me, or I work very closely in their team, or either I am their boss or they are my boss. There can be different dynamics, right? And when there are such close dynamics between the respondent and the complainant and the 4 members of the ICC, then we need to make sure that for that investigation, that one ICC member, which is clearly biased here, and the bias is clearly shown, they need to step down and some other member needs to come for the purpose of that inquiry. These small things go a long way in making sure that ICC reports are not challenged in any court of law. And they are proper, and they are just final, and nobody else complains about it, nobody raises a question about it, nobody raises an objection about it at the end of the day. Second reason why ICC's bias comes into place, and this is a very obvious one, I think when I say it, you all will also realize it, is that an ICC member was a witness in the case. So either the complainant or the respondent named the ICC member as a witness in their case. And imagine ICC again interviewing their own ICC member as a witness while the ICC member is sitting on board. That's not okay, right? That's not possible also. But these are small things that still happen. Because in the interest of time and in the interest of doing it fast, people forget about small things. So in the very beginning, these are very important things that we need to make sure that ICC, with every investigation, there is the obvious biases are not there, and the ICC, while investigating the case, is also appearing in a very non-biased manner. Powers of the civil court. So again, what makes the constitution very important, because as ICC we have certain powers of the civil court in terms of enforcing and adhering attendance, and enforcing and making sure that some evidence comes into. If there are certain evidence that we need, then that evidence is something that we can call for at the end of the day. So these are These are small powers, but these are still powers of a civil code that has been imposed and that has been given to ICC to make sure that they get that they can do their work properly.